Hi everyone. Today's unit project consists of a short story titled The Contents of a Dead Man's Pockets. You'll read the story and you'll answer questions that go with it. There are 5 essential questions that go along with the reading of this story. It is beneficial to look at the questions ahead of time so that you know what you are looking for as you're reading. The questions are as follows. Essential question number 1 is, Tom is faced with an internal conflict. What is it, and how does he resolve it? You will answer the question, and you will also answer part 2, which deals with finding quotes from the story that helped you answer the question above. You should find answers from the story, find a paragraph or a quote or something that happened, a plot event, that helps you answer that first question. Question number 2 says, what is Tom's ambition? How does his ambition relate to the conflict he experiences? Same for question number 2. There's a second half to it, and it asks that you find a quote or a plot event or a character action that helps you answer the question above. Ambition, of course, means what does he want? What is he driving toward? Question number 3 says, the author describes the transformation that takes place in Tom from self-confidence to fear. How does this transformation affect his life's priorities? And again, there's a second half to question number 3, which says, what parts of the story help to answer the question above? Quotes, character actions, plot events. Question number 4, the author describes Tom's reaction to looking inside his own living room window from outside. He notices the yellow sheet still, and then in quotations, clenched in his front teeth. How has his opinion of this yellow sheet of paper changed? Then the second half, again, is a quote, character action, or plot event that helped you answer question number 4. Question number 5 says, when Tom imagines the report of the contents of the dead man's pocket, what does he realize about his own life experiences, or life's priorities? And then again, second half, quote, character action, or plot event that helped you answer the question above. So you'll answer those 5 questions as you read the story. And then when you are done with the story, there is and I say analytical essay, but it doesn't have to be quite as long as you would imagine an essay typically would be. The directions are, in essay format, please present an articulate and well-supported analysis of the short story, The Contents of a Dead Man's Pockets by Jack Finney. Your essay should be in direct response to the prompt given. You need only to staple your printed essay in Times New Roman 12-point font double-spaced to the back of this sheet. I have these sheets available for you as hard copies. Just go ahead and ask me when you're ready for it. The prompt is this. Can life's events cause us to change our priorities? After reading The Contents of a Dead Man's Pocket, write an essay that explains Tom's priorities and how those priorities have changed. Support your position with evidence from the text. Your prompt will be graded in a proper format, complete answer and analysis of the prompt chosen, as well as grammatical correctness. This essay will give me an idea of your strengths and weaknesses as a writer and will help you prepare areas where we can improve. So as you read the story, you are to do these things, answer those 5 questions, and respond to that analytical essay. Here again is the actual PDF of the short story itself. I do have printed copies in my classroom, but only a few, and if you want to just follow along on this video, you're welcome to do that as well. I will get started with you here. So, The Contents of a Dead Man's Pockets by Jack Finney. At the little living room desk, Tom Beneke rolled 2 sheets of flimsy and a heavier top sheet, carbon paper sandwiched between them, into his portable interoffice memo. The top sheet was headed, and he typed tomorrow's date just below this. Then he glanced at a creased yellow sheet covered with his own handwriting beside the typewriter. Hot in here, he muttered to himself. Then, from the short hallway at his back, he heard the muffled clang of wire coat hangers in the bedroom closet, and at the reminder of what his wife was doing, he, though hot, no guilty conscience. He got up, shoving his hands into the back pockets of his gray wash slacks, stepped to the living room window beside the desk, and stood breathing on the glass, watching the expanding circlet of mist staring down through the autumn night at Lexington Avenue, 11 stories below. He was a tall, lean, dark-haired young man in a pullover sweater who looked as though he had played not football, probably, but basketball in college. Now, he placed the heels of his hands against the top edge of the lower window frame and shoved upward. But as usual, the window didn't budge, and he had to lower his hands and then shoot them hard upward to jolt the window open a few inches. He dusted his hands, muttering. But still, he didn't begin his work. He crossed the room to the hallway entrance, and leaning against the door jamb, hands shoved into his back pockets again, he called, "Claire?" When his wife answered, he said, "Sir, you sure you don't mind going alone?" "No," her voice was muffled, and he knew her head and shoulders were in the bedroom closet. Then the tap of her high heels sounded on the wood floor, and she appeared at the end of the little hallway, wearing a slip, both hands raised to one ear, clipping on an earring. She smiled at him, a slender, very pretty girl with light brown, almost blonde hair, her prettiness emphasized by the pleasant nature that showed up in her face. "It's just that I hate you to miss this movie. You wanted to see it too." "Yeah, I know." He ran his fingers through his hair. "Gotta get this done, though." She nodded, accepting this. Then, glancing at the desk across the living room, she said, "You work too much, though, Tom, and too hard." He smiled. "You won't mind, though, will you, when the money comes rolling in, and I'm known as the boy wizard of wholesale groceries?" "I guess not," she smiled, and turned back toward the bedroom. At his desk again, Tom lighted a cigarette, then just a few minutes later, as Claire appeared, dressed and ready to leave, he set it at the rim of the ashtray. "Just after 7," she said. "I can make the beginning of the first feature." He walked to the front door closet to help her on with her coat. He kissed her, and then, for an instant, holding her close, smelling the perfume she had used, he was tempted to go with her. It was not actually true that he had to work tonight, though he very much wanted to. This was his own project, unannounced as yet in his office, and it could be postponed. But then, you won't see it till Monday, he thought once again, and if I give it to the boss tomorrow, he might read it over the weekend. "Have a good time," he said aloud. He gave his wife a little swat and opened the door for her, feeling the air from the cold building hallway, smelling faintly of floor wax, stream past his face. He watched her walk down the hall, flicked a hand in response as she waved, and then he started to close the door. But it resisted for a moment. As the door opening narrowed, the current of warm air from the hallway channeled through this small opening now suddenly rushed past him with an accelerated force. Behind him, he heard the slap of the window curtains against the wall and the sound of paper fluttering from his desk, and he had to push close the door. Turning, he saw a sheet of white paper drifting to the floor in a series of arcs, and another sheet, yellow, moving toward the window, caught in the dying current flowing through the narrow opening. As he watched, the paper struck the bottom edge of the window and hung there for an instant, plastered against the glass and wood. Then, as the moving air stilled completely, the curtain swinging back from the hall to hang free again, he saw the yellow sheet drop to the window ledge and slide over out of sight. So at this point, we've had two things happen. The first is that we've seen where he has prioritized his time, not with his wife at the movies, but with his work. He seems to think that he can be a very successful wholesale grocer. But then the next event that seems to have been highlighted is that this yellow sheet of paper has fallen out the window. I think in the next couple paragraphs we'll see how important that yellow piece of paper was to him. He ran across the room, grasped the bottom edge of the window, and tugged, staring through the glass. He saw the yellow sheet, dimly now in the darkness outside, lying on the ornamental ledge a yard below the window. Even as he watched, it was moving, scraping slowly along the ledge, pushed by the breeze that pressed steadily against the building wall. He heaved on the window wall with all of his strength, and it shot open with a bang, the window weight rattling at the casing. But the paper was past his reach, and leaning out into the night, He watched it scud steadily along the ledge to the south, half plastered against the building wall. Above the muffled sound of the street traffic far below, he could hear the dry scrape of its movement, like a leaf on the pavement. The living room of the next apartment to the south projected a yard or more farther out into the street than this one. Because of this, the Bennexes paid $7.50 less rent than their neighbors, and now the yellow sheet, sliding along the stone ledge, nearly invisible in the night, was stopped by the projecting blank wall of the next apartment. It lay motionless, then, in the corner formed by the two walls, a good 5 yards away, pressed firmly against the ornate corner ornament of the ledge, by the breeze that moved past Tom Benecke's face. He knelt at the window and stared at the yellow paper for a full minute or more, waiting for it to move, to slide off the ledge and fall, hoping he could follow its course to the street, and then hurry down the elevator and retrieve it. But it didn't move. And then he saw the paper was caught firmly between the projection of the convoluted corner ornament and the ledge. He thought about the poker from the fireplace, then the broom, then the mop, discarding each thought as it occurred to him. There was nothing in the apartment long enough to reach that paper. It was hard for him to understand that he actually had to abandon it. It was ridiculous. He had began to curse. Of all the papers on his desk, why did it have to be this one in particular? On 4 long Saturday afternoons, he had stood in supermarkets counting the people who had passed certain displays, and the results were scribbled on that yellow sheet. From the stacks of the trade publications gone over page by page in snatched half-hours at work, and during evenings at home, he had copied facts, quotations, and figures onto that sheet, and he had carried it with him to the public library on Fifth Avenue, where he'd spent a dozen lunch hours and early evenings adding more. All were needed to support and lend authority to his idea for a new grocery store display method. Without them, his idea was mere opinion, and there they all lay in his own improvised shorthand, countless hours of work out on that ledge. To this point, I think we can answer essential question number 1 and essential question number 2. Essential question number 1 says, Tom is faced with an internal conflict. What is it, and how does he resolve it? Well, the internal conflict seems to be that he can either go with his wife to the movies, or he can stay home to work. Now remember, he doesn't feel as though he has to work today, but he can get ahead, and maybe his boss will read his work over the weekend instead of having to wait until Monday. So he's kind of wrestling with that. Essential question number 2 says, what is Tom's ambition? How does this ambition relate to the conflict he experiences? Well, if you recall, his wife is a little disappointed that he's not going with because he wanted to see the film as well. But he says something to the effect of, and you can find the direct quote in the story, which you'll put here at quote for number 2, which part of the story helped you answer the question above, when he says something to the effect of, but how will you feel when the money comes rolling in and I am the best wholesale grocer, in the land, or exactly, I don't remember how he phrases it, but you'd find that quote and put that in the second half of question number 2. But we know what Tom's ambition is. He wants to be a successful businessman. Question number 3. The author describes the transformation that takes place in Tom from self-confidence to fear. How does this transformation affect his life's priorities? I do not believe we have quite reached that point, though we can definitely tell that there's a little bit of fear in the loss of this yellow sheet of paper. And I sense that maybe the answer is coming soon. With that is where I'm going to leave you to continue the story on your own and complete these essential questions.